The hall was buzzing with laughter, the kind that echoes off the walls and makes even strangers feel like they belong. Chandeliers glittered overhead, white drapes billowed softly, and the birthday banners shimmered under the lights. It was supposed to be a happy evening, my grandson's birthday. A moment of celebration, togetherness, family. I had dressed with care, wearing the emerald green shawl my husband had gifted me years ago, the one he said made my eyes glow like soft glass under sunlight. I walked into the hall smiling, carrying the little gift I bought with what I had, a small wooden car I hand-painted myself. I knew it wasn't expensive. I knew it wasn't fancy. But it was made with love. What I didn't know was that this evening would become the night my heart cracked in front of everyone. The guests were gathered in a circle, the cake placed beautifully in the center. It was tall, three-tiered, decorated with fondant stars and tiny edible planets. Extravagant, expensive, clearly chosen to impress. My daughter-in-law, Ariba, stood proudly beside it, smiling at the relatives who praised her for hosting such a grand event. My son stood beside her, beaming like a man who had done something remarkable. I approached them slowly, waving softly. "Beta, happy birthday to my little one," I said, touching my grandson's cheek gently. But before I could hug him, someone behind me laughed loudly and said, "Where is your gift, Auntie? You brought something." I smiled awkwardly and held up the small wooden car. A few people exchanged looks, those silent, judging glances that stab more than words. But the worst was yet to come. My son looked around proudly, puffed his chest, and in an overly loud voice said, "Everything here is arranged by my father-in-law. Even the cake." Mom didn't have to worry about anything. She didn't even buy the cake, haha. There was laughter. Actual laughter. From people who once ate at my table. People who once called me Boji, Auntie, Ami. For a moment, I stood frozen. My son's words kept circling in my mind. Mom didn't even buy the cake. As if a mother's worth was measured in desserts. As if I had been freeloading. As if I wasn't the one who raised him, sacrificed for him, skipped meals so he could eat better, stayed awake at night to sew his school uniform because we couldn't afford to buy a new one. Ariba smirked and added, "Obu handled everything. Mom is just here to enjoy today." Her tone wasn't soft. It wasn't kind. It was dripping with mockery. And everyone heard it. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Humiliation burned my throat. The wooden car in my hand suddenly felt heavy, too heavy, like a reminder of how little I meant to them. I looked at my son. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct them. He didn't hold my hand. He simply smiled, enjoying the attention, the validation, the spotlight. In that moment, I realized something painful. My son had changed. Or perhaps, I had never seen who he truly was until now. I tried to swallow the sting. "Beta. I didn't buy the cake because you said everything was already arranged," I whispered softly, hoping to recover some dignity. But he waved his hand dismissively and said loudly, "Haha, best mom. You know you don't need to feel bad. Father-in-law pays for everything now. You just relax." That line cut deep, deeper than he could ever imagine. Suddenly, I wasn't his mother anymore. I was a burden. A spectator. An afterthought. Ariba looked at me with sarcastic sweetness. "Auntie, you could have at least contributed something small. Even a cupcake." Another round of laughter. My heart squeezed painfully. I felt the walls closing in. The music sounded distant. The lights blurred. A grandmother mocked at her own grandchild's birthday. I looked at the small car in my hand, the only thing I could afford this month. My pension had been delayed. My medicines were expensive. And after paying the electricity bill, I barely had anything left. But no one knew. Because I never complained. I never asked for help. I never wanted to burden anyone. I quietly walked and placed the gift on the table. No one noticed. No one cared. But one person saw everything. My little grandson. He tugged at my shawl gently and whispered, "Doddy, don't be sad." His tiny voice cracked something inside me. I realized that while adults talk loudly, children feel deeply. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Doddy is okay, beta." But I wasn't okay. I was shattered, humiliated, invisible. Standing in that decorated hall filled with expensive lights, laughter, and fake smiles, I felt like a stranger among my own family. And deep in my heart, a quiet fire began to rise. Not of anger, not of revenge, but of resolve. Because they had forgotten who I was. But they were about to remember. And when they did, it would be too late. I left the birthday hall quietly after the cake cutting, even though the celebration was still loud and cheerful behind me. No one noticed me slip outside, not even my own son. The air was cool, the evening wind brushing against my shawl like a gentle reminder that I still existed in a world far bigger than the people who had just humiliated me. For a moment, I stood beside the garden, watching the fairy lights wrapped around the trees. They flickered softly, almost like they were breathing. I felt strangely calm. Not angry. Not crying. Just empty. Like someone had taken a large part of me and walked away laughing. I remembered the early days, when my son was young and clung to my dupatta every time he felt scared. He would say, "Ami, don't ever leave me." Today he didn't even see me leave. I walked toward the gate, but a voice called softly behind me. "Auntie, are you okay?" It was the hall's cleaner. A simple woman with kindness in her eyes. I forced a smile. "Yes, beta. I'm okay." But she wasn't convinced. She pointed gently to the gift table. "I saw how they laughed, Auntie. Some people forget what mothers have done for them." Her words warmed my heart more than anything said inside that hall. I thanked her, and as I walked out, I promised myself, I will no longer wait for respect from those who don't value me. The night breeze carried the scent of roses from a nearby garden. I inhaled deeply, letting the cool air settle the storm inside me. But even as I walked home, each step felt heavy with memories. Good memories that suddenly tasted bitter. The way I worked overtime to pay for his school fees. The nights I stayed awake sewing his torn uniform. The mornings I walked him to school barefoot because he had the only pair of shoes in the house. The days I skipped meals so he could eat properly. The years I dreamed of a future where he stood proudly beside me. But today he stood proudly, by someone else. When I reached home, I turned on the dim lamp in the living room. The house was silent, cold, and small, but it was mine. I sat on the sofa and stared at the wall, letting the pain wash over me slowly. I wasn't crying. Tears felt too weak for what happened today. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity. A realization. A shift in my heart. They didn't humiliate me because I was poor. They humiliated me because they thought I would stay silent. But silence is a powerful storm. One that comes without warning. One that can turn a quiet mother into an unstoppable force. I rose from the sofa and walked toward the old wooden cupboard where I kept the blue folder. My husband's papers, saved for years. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. Inside were documents my son didn't know existed. Papers he took for granted. Papers he assumed were worthless. But they weren't. I sat on the floor and opened them one by one. Property documents. Savings certificates. Insurance papers. A small piece of land my husband had left in my name. A bank account my son believed was empty. Memories and sacrifices preserved between sheets of paper. I touched my husband's signature and closed my eyes. "Look at what your son has become," I whispered. "He mocked me today. In front of everyone." I didn't say it to complain. I said it because a plan was forming inside me. A calm plan. A quiet plan. A mother's plan. One that didn't require shouting or arguing. One that didn't require revenge through anger. Just truth. Just exposure. Just a mirror to show them who they had become. The next morning, my doorbell rang. It was my neighbor, Shagufta, the only person who had always treated me with respect. "How was the birthday?" she asked cheerfully. Her question stung like salt on a fresh wound. I sat her down and told her everything. Every word, every laugh, every insult. And she, being a woman who understood a mother's heart, didn't hold back her anger. "They forgot your worth," she said. "So remind them. Stop supporting them financially." I looked at her, confused. "Supporting them? I don't give them money anymore." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Because I've seen your son using your husband's land papers for mortgage. And I heard him telling someone that everything will transfer to his name soon." My heart dropped. They were planning to take everything, while mocking me for giving nothing. It suddenly felt like the air had left the room. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My own son, using my husband's hard-earned documents, without my permission? But Shagufta wasn't done. "Ariba tells everyone that you depend on them, that they give you money every month." I felt dizzy. I depend on them? I depend on the same people who didn't even ask if I had eaten today? That's when something inside me snapped, not with anger, but with strength. A silent transformation, like a flame that suddenly turns blue and burns stronger. I stood up. "Shagufta, I think it's time," I said. "Time for what?" she asked. "Time they learn who really carries the weight of this house. Time they learn what I truly have. Time they learn what they lost the moment they humiliated me. Because they thought I was weak. But weakness ends where dignity begins." I walked to my cupboard, took the blue folder, and placed it on the table. The papers lay there like a shield, like armor I had forgotten I owned. I picked up my phone. Not to call my son. Not to argue. Not to cry. But to call a lawyer. A very old friend of my husband's. He answered on the second ring. "Assalamu alaikum, Boji. How are you?" I took a deep breath. "Walaikum assalam. I need your help." The quiet in my voice startled even me. He listened as I told him what had happened, and in the end he said something that changed everything. "Boji, your husband left you enough to live with dignity. If your son doesn't respect you, then you don't owe him anything." And just like that, a new chapter began. A chapter where I wasn't the quiet mother anymore. A chapter where I wasn't a burden. A chapter where my voice, silent for years, finally rose with strength. Because they mocked me for not buying a cake. But soon, they would realize I had something far bigger. Something they never expected. And when they found out, their laughter would turn into shock. Their pride into regret. And my silence into the loudest truth they had ever heard. The next morning arrived with an unusual stillness. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm, where even the sparrows on the balcony sit silently, as if waiting. I woke earlier than usual, not out of habit, but out of purpose. Today wasn't just another day. Today was the day I would reclaim my dignity. Quietly, calmly, and with the kind of strength only a mother can carry after years of being taken for granted. I made tea, placed the blue folder on the table, and sat down. My hands didn't shake today. My heart didn't race. Instead, a strange confidence settled inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. At exactly 10 a.m., the lawyer, my late husband's closest friend, Advocate Rahim, called. "I have reviewed all the documents," he said. "Boji, you have full ownership of your husband's assets. No one can touch anything without your consent." His words weren't just information, they were power. Power I didn't even realize I had. And if someone has already tried to use these papers without permission? I asked quietly. There was a pause on the phone, the serious kind. "That's illegal. And you can file a case. Even a mother can take action against her own children if they misuse her property." Children. That word hit me differently today. My son was no longer the little boy I once rocked to sleep. He had become a man who used my silence against me. A man who forgot the value of a mother's heart. A man who mocked me publicly because he believed I would always stay quiet. But he was about to learn a truth he never expected. By noon, the legal documents were ready. I met Advocate Rahim at his office, a place filled with old books, thick files, and the smell of aging paper. When I signed the papers in front of him, he leaned back and said, "You've taken the first step, Baji. Now hold your head high. You deserve respect, not humiliation." That sentence felt like a balm on a wound I had hidden for years. Before leaving, the advocate handed me an envelope. "This is your bank statement. I thought you should see it." I opened it right there. My savings, small but steady, were all intact, untouched. But there was something else. A series of withdrawal attempts. Multiple. Denied, because the account required my signature. My son had tried to take money from my account. And failed. I felt my breath catch, not because of the attempted theft, but because he never once asked me if I needed anything. He never once cared for my comfort. He only cared for what he could take. I left the office with slow steps, the envelope clutched in my hand like a final proof of betrayal. That evening, I prepared something simple for dinner, dal and roti, but I couldn't swallow the food. My mind kept replaying the birthday night. The laughter. The mockery. The disrespect. But suddenly, there was a knock on my door. I opened it expecting my neighbor. Instead, my son stood there. Not with concern. Not with apology. But with impatience. "Ami, why did you leave early yesterday?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting. I stared at him for a long moment. He looked restless, as if he had come with an agenda. His eyes scanned the house, searching for something. Finally, he sat down and said, "By the way, Bobba's land papers? I left them here last week. Can you give them back? I need them urgently." There it was. The truth he didn't know I knew. I sat down calmly. "You need them for what?" He hesitated. "Just some work." I didn't blink. "What work?" His eyes darted away. "A business investment. Ariba's father said he can help if I mortgage the land." Ah, so that was their plan. My son, who mocked me for not buying a cake, wanted to use the only thing my husband left for me. I folded my hands in my lap. "Beta, that land is not yours." He scoffed. "Ami, stop being dramatic. Eventually everything is mine. I'm your son." I felt the words hit, but they didn't break me this time. Not today. Not after everything I had learned. I looked him straight in the eyes, something I rarely did anymore. "Everything is yours? Who told you that?" He shrugged casually. "It's obvious. Parents leave property to their kids. You don't even need it." My voice dropped to a calm whisper. "Do you think you deserve it?" His face stiffened. "What kind of question is that?" "The kind that comes after the way you humiliated me yesterday," I said quietly. He froze. His confident expression faltered. His foot tapped nervously. "Ami, you're taking a small joke too seriously." "A joke?" My voice cracked softly. "Calling me worthless? Telling people I depend on others? Laughing at me because I didn't buy a cake?" He looked away. "Ami, stop making it big." Everyone laughed only a little. I cut him off. "No. Everyone laughed because you gave them permission to laugh." A pin-drop silence filled the room. He swallowed hard. "Okay, fine. I'm sorry if you felt bad. Now can you give me the land papers?" That was his apology. A bargain. A transaction. "No," I said simply. He blinked. "What do you mean no?" "It means no." His tone shifted. His voice grew sharper. "Ami, you're creating problems for me. I already promised Ariba's father." "And I didn't promise you anything," I replied. He stood up abruptly, anger flashing in his eyes. Ami, don't force me. I will take them. I took a deep breath. Beta, you already tried. His face turned pale. How do you know? He whispered. I slowly reached for the envelope and placed it in front of him. Your failed attempts to withdraw from my account. I saw everything today. His mouth opened but no words came out. The facade of son who takes care of his mother collapsed instantly. Ami, I just thought, you don't use that money. I said nothing. He sat down again, shock replacing his anger. Ami, please, don't misunderstand. I held up my hand. Stop. I don't want explanations. I want honesty. He lowered his head. For years, I tolerated disrespect in silence. But today, my silence had changed. Beta, I'm not giving you the land. I'm not giving you my savings. And I'm not giving you the papers. He looked up in disbelief. So you're going to ruin my future? I shook my head gently. No. I'm going to protect my own. He stared at me for a long moment. Confused. Lost. Afraid. Because for the first time, he saw me not as a weak mother, but as a woman with strength. I'll talk to you later, he muttered angrily and walked out. I didn't stop him. I didn't call his name. I didn't run after him like I always did. Instead, I closed the door softly. And as I leaned against it, I realized something. Respect is not something a mother receives automatically. It's something she must sometimes fight for, even against her own children. And I was done being silent. The next step I was about to take would change everything. For him. For his wife. For their pride. For their future. Because tomorrow, they would learn the truth. And it would break them more than anything I could ever say. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid. Not because I doubted my decision. But because my heart, after years of breaking silently, was finally healing in its own quiet strength. When the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, I sat up. It was gentle, warm, and pure. The opposite of everything I had endured in the past few days. As I wrapped my shawl around me, I felt something shift inside me, a sense of dignity returning to its rightful place. Today, I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just a woman living alone. I wasn't a victim of humiliation. Today, I was the owner of my own story. And the people who thought I was powerless were about to learn something unforgettable. By noon, my house felt like the center of a gathering storm. It started with a phone call. Ami, can we come over? Ariba is with me, my son said, his voice shaky. Yes, Beta, I replied calmly. Come. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show anger. Silence had become my strength, and silence is more frightening than screams. Within half an hour, they arrived. My son stepped inside first, eyes restless, shoulders tense. Ariba followed, wearing a carefully crafted expression, polite, sweet, fake. Assalamu alaikum, auntie, she said softly. Walaikum assalam, I replied with the same softness, but without bending. They took their seats, awkward and silent. My son tapped his foot rapidly. Ariba kept adjusting her dupatta, clearly uncomfortable. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to negotiate. And I was ready. I placed the blue folder on the table. Slowly, deliberately. Their eyes followed it like hungry predators. My son cleared his throat. Ami, let's talk calmly. We should not let small misunderstandings break our family. Ariba nodded quickly. Auntie, whatever happened at the party, it was just casual. You know how people joke. I looked at her. Ariba, was it a joke when you said I could have at least bought a cupcake? Her lips tightened. She had no answer. My son jumped in, defensive. Ami, you're exaggerating. No one meant to hurt you. Why are you making it sound so big? I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. Beta. The insult wasn't big. The realization was. He frowned. Realization. That I raised a son who can laugh at his mother in public. That I raised a son who sees my worth in what I can buy. That I raised a son who hides behind his in-laws because he has no identity of his own. That I raised a son who loves his pride more than his mother. Silence fell like a stone between us. My son's face stiffened. Ariba looked shocked. I continued, my voice steady and calm. Yesterday wasn't about a cake. It was about respect. And today isn't about property. It's about dignity. Ariba tried again. Auntie, we didn't mean. I raised my hand gently. You meant every word. Because words spoken in pride are rarely accidental. My son leaned forward. Ami, please stop dragging this. Just give me the land papers. We will sort everything out later. Ah, there it was. Not apology. Not regret. Not understanding. Just greed. I opened the blue folder slowly and slid a document toward them. This is the updated legal notice, I said. Their eyes widened. What legal notice? My son whispered. I looked straight at him. The lawyer has secured everything in my name. Completely. You can no longer use, sell, mortgage, or touch anything that belonged to your father. He stared at me, disbelief written across his face. You're choosing a stranger over your own son? No, I said softly. I'm choosing myself. For the first time in my life. His jaw tightened. Ami, you can't do this. I can, I replied. And I have. Ariba suddenly snapped. The softness vanished. Auntie, you don't even need these properties. What will you do with them at this age? They should go to your son. Families don't function like this. I looked at her with a calm she couldn't understand. Beta, families don't function on greed. They function on respect. She stood up, angry now. So you want us to suffer? You want us to struggle while you sit here with everything? For the first time, I smiled. Didn't you say at the party that your father pays for everything? For the cake? For the decorations? For your comfort? Ariba froze. So why do you need my property? I asked. My son finally lost control. Ami, stop. You're ruining my life. I stood up slowly. No. Beta. You ruined our relationship when you stood in that hall and mocked me like I was nothing. He opened his mouth, but I continued before he could speak. Do you know why I didn't buy the cake? Because you told me not to worry. Do you know why I didn't give an expensive gift? Because I couldn't afford one this month. Do you know why I stayed silent? Because I thought, you loved me enough to protect my dignity. Tears filled my eyes, but they didn't weaken my voice. I stayed silent for years thinking one day you would see my sacrifices. But yesterday, you didn't just fail me. You exposed who you've become. My son slowly sat down, defeated, staring at the floor. Ariba wiped a tear angrily. So what now? I took a deep breath. Now, the truth becomes official. I opened the final document. I have transferred everything to my grandson. They both gasped. Their faces drained of color. My son whispered, Ami, no, you can't. I can, I said, because he is the only one who touched my face gently last night and said, Doddy, don't be sad. He gave me respect, the only thing I ever wanted. Ariba's voice cracked. What about us? You will get what you gave, I said gently. Humiliation, disrespect, and greed bring nothing but emptiness. My son broke down finally, tears streaming down his face. Ami, please. Please don't do this. I walked closer and touched his head. Beta, I still love you. A mother's heart never stops loving. But love does not mean surrender. And today, I choose dignity. He cried harder, kneeling by my feet. Ami, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I didn't bend down to comfort him. Not this time. Sometimes a mother must let her children feel the weight of their own actions. I took a step back. Your apology is late. Not useless, but late. And some lessons must come with consequences. Ariba finally broke into sobs. Auntie, please. I raised the final paper. You will accept that nothing belongs to you. You will accept that respect is the price of love. You will accept that a mother is not a weak woman to be mocked in public. I set the document down. And when you learn all this, maybe then, I will forgive you. I turned away. Not out of cruelty, but out of strength. Behind me, I heard their cries, their regret, their fear. But ahead of me, I felt peace. Calm, golden, liberating peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't just someone's mother. I was a woman who rediscovered her worth. A woman who fought quietly, and won loudly. A woman who finally understood. A mother's silence is not weakness. It is warning. And when that silence ends, the world listens. The story didn't end in anger. It ended in truth. A truth they could no longer deny. A truth that would echo in their hearts for the rest of their lives. And I walked to the window, letting sunlight fall on my face. The same sunlight I had once hidden my tears under, was now shining on my strength. The strength of a mother who finally reclaimed her dignity.